Any type of marketing, it doesn't matter if you're doing awareness or performance based, eventually got to be profitable. So no wonder when we talk to prospects, we get a lot of questions on the cost side. What's your hourly rate? What's your retainer? How much do you charge per website? And then we get people on the performance side. Do you guarantee rankings? Do you guarantee leads? What's the exact cost per lead? How many links per month do you do in your SEO package? And those questions are a signal, a symptom of clients trying to standardize all of the different agencies they talk to and to answer to themselves to that question: is that profitable? Is this agency any better than our previous? Or maybe they're the same, but they're cheaper and they're going to do the same work. So we're going to be profitable. Unfortunately, knowing how the back end works, all of those reasonable questions a lot of times are not going to answer what you really want to know. Should you have a relationship with that agency? Is that going to be profitable? And that's why we created a series of articles covering most common agency pricing strategies from hourly all the way to 100% performance based. And I want to talk about different projects when different pricing strategies are appropriate, what we would suggest. And I want to be honest about the inherent dilemmas when it comes to agency pricing. I want to talk about risk and reward because marketing is inherently risky. And the more risk you take, the more rewards you can gain. And the relationship is opposite if you don't want to take a risk. And we have naturally different conflicting priorities between client and agency because if we're being honest about it, clients want the best marketing services, the most amount of them, for the least possible price. If they could pay zero and get everything, that would be the most amazing fantasy scenario. And agencies want exactly opposite. If they want to do the least amount of work for the most amount of money, and somehow we need to come together where it's a win-win situation and not lose-lose. And that's what this series are about. There are many challenges to agency pricing, but I want to focus on the four main ones I see. Number one is huge price discrepancy on the services. So for this video, I went to Fiverr and I typed Google Ads, and you can have a campaign started at $5 US or $8 Canadian. Now we will charge $1,600 for the smallest campaign. And I know a company that's not going to even touch your campaign until you deposit $20,000 and then pay a retainer. So of course, unless you're a campaign specialist and you worked with Google Ads before, it'll be very hard for a client to evaluate what's the difference in the level of service they get with that huge discrepancy in pricing. And that leads me to point number two. Marketing services are very complicated in 2024 when I'm recording this video. Any area you go to, influencer marketing, programmatic, conversion based, it's in-depth subject in itself. And unless you know it very well, it'll be very hard for you to understand what are you buying because it's not tangible. So some marketers resort to gimmicky metrics. So I continued on the Fiverr and I put like backlinks, and I saw this person selling links for $2.25. So they can deliver 100 links per month. Your SEO is gonna great, but it's a gimmicky metric because if you know anything about SEO, at best, those links are not gonna do anything, but they might even hurt your website. And speaking about hurting, from the agency side, digital marketing is not new. When we started that agency 17 years ago and we were talking to people about SEO, not everybody knew what it is about. But now a lot of businesses been with an agency or freelancer and they get burned somewhere along the way. So we get people that we know for sure can benefit from either SEO or paid, but they tell us, no, I've tried SEO, it doesn't work, I only want to do paid. Or no, I did paid and I paid $8 per clicks, now only SEO, or I want viral campaign on TikTok. That is the only way in 2024. So it's challenging from agency side to convince the client that they might need a service that they've been burned with before. And finally, the big elephant in the room is that the gatekeepers to marketing, Google, Meta, TikTok, and we don't work for those companies. We cannot call up Google and say, listen, my buddy is here. I want him on the first place on the organic rankings and paid. It's impossible. We cannot guarantee those results. We can follow the best practices and do what we saw that worked before. But again, we don't work for those companies. And naturally, as a client, if you're buying an SEO package, you want to know like where the money is going. You want that guarantee. But not a single reputable SEO company will guarantee the result. So when we take the huge price differences, the complexity, previous bad experiences, and reliance on third-party big companies, it makes agency pricing super complicated. Now, to complicate those four things, and I already mentioned that in the beginning, but I think it's important to talk about it again, because every agency pricing type, we're going to look through a POV of risk versus reward, what's in it for the client, what's in it for the agency. Now, I want to say it, and I think it's common sense, and you probably know it, but it's important to say it. There is no risk-free marketing. Marketing is investment, and like any investment, it carries risks. Yes, we have predictive models, AI, machine learning, tracking, but those models only predict certain amount of outcomes, and they're based on historical data, and variables change, so it is risky. And like with any investment, if you take more risk, the upside is higher. And if you take less risks, the upside is smaller. And you cannot have no risk and a huge upside. It doesn't work in this universe. Before we jump into pricing types, I'll give you a quick example. For example, you sign a retainer with an SEO company and you pay the same amount of money. That's risky because you're paying to the marketing agency without knowing what results you're going to get. But the upside is it doesn't matter if we brought you 10 leads or 100 leads this month, you're going to pay the same. So yes, you took the risk, but there is a potential upside there. Versus you say, listen, I already paid for SEO packages. I only want to pay for leads. No problem. That means agencies taking the risk. That means we're going to charge you for every single lead. So yes, you're not taking any risk, but upside is not as high. And that's risk versus reward. And the final point here, let's talk about conflicting priorities. Like, let's be real. I mentioned that in the introduction, but worth repeating. From the client point of view, you want guaranteed results, no risk, and not to pay a lot of money for it, or ideally pay zero for it. From our point of view, we want to be compensated for what we know, for our strategy. We don't want to do a lot of work or click a lot of buttons, and we want to earn the most amount of money if possible. And we also do not want to take risk. So just like it's risk versus reward for the clients, it's also for the agency. So if agency is working on performance based kind of compensation, that means we're taking the risk, which means our upside is going to be higher. So when we're talking about pricing packages, again, I want you to remember risk versus reward, agency versus client. Now let's talk about 4 pricing models we're going to be covering in this series. In real world, there's a lot of different models and hybrids, but we're going to be focused on 4 main ones. Number 1 is hourly pricing. It's self-explanatory. Either agency tracks hours and then they bill you, or they do it per project where they originally tell you how many hours it's going to take to finish a certain task. Number 2 is retainer pricing. You pay the same amount of money to the agency every month, and you either get the same service, like for example SEO, or 1 month we're installing Google conversion tracking, next month we do commercial, and 3rd month we're running an article for SEO purposes. Number 3 is performance-based. So whatever KPI you have, quantity of leads, quantity of organic traffic, rankings, we get paid based on those KPIs. And finally, value-based. That's where agencies want to be. This is where we provide a certain amount of expertise that nobody else has, and it's very valuable for a client. So it doesn't matter if it only takes 1 hour, they're willing to pay premium for it. So quickly, hourly pricing. That works for smaller projects. We need conversion tracking, or it doesn't work. There is a bug on a website. We need Google Looker report. Something that is either small or a little bit of unpredictable. So on the agency side, we get the benefit that we don't know how long fixing the conversion tracking is going to work. Maybe it's going to be 15 minutes, maybe it's going to be 4 hours. So it seems fair to the agency to be paid by the hour. On the client side, they're not overcommitting to the agency and they're buying just what they need. But there are inherent problems with hourly rates. Number one is it doesn't matter how honest of a person I'm hiring and work for me. If I incentivize them on the amount of hours that they work, naturally they will work longer hours. Even though as a business, I'd rather them resolve it in 10 minutes rather than 4 hours. So this mismatch of the interests. Number two, it's hard to compare the effectiveness of an hour. Somebody might say I charge $5 per hour, but it will take me 10 hours. And we charge $200 per hour, but we can solve it in an hour. So hourly rate, it has its place in the beginning of very specific applications, but it's one of the worst pricing models for a longer term relationship. Quickly, number two, retainer pricing. So from a client side, you get stable outcome, so you know your budget for a year. You develop relationship with an agency, so you have the same person. You don't have to retell them the story or send them passwords like when you do it with freelancers and when you work per hour. On our end, on agency side, because we have this stable income, we can allocate stable resources. We can put an account manager. We can start projecting some expenses for the content or links or campaign specialists. And then you can get the services that you need. Either it's the same services or they rotate. Usually the problems with the retainer pricing come from lack of communication or trust when one side believes they should be doing more for the retainer and another side believes like we're doing way more. There is a scope creep. We agreed that this is what's included in a retainer, but now we're doing social media and hosting the website and updating it. Performance-based pricing. So this is where the client is not taking as much risk and the agency start taking the risk. This is where we walking the walk. But if we're taking a risk, we want to be rewarded for it. So we want to be paid way more than the retainer package. And this works when the business type has very clear outcomes. Works great for e-commerce, for lead generation kind of businesses. And it works the best when there is a huge amount of trust between the client and the agency where we both know we're not trying to screw each other over. We're on the same page about the attribution, what constitutes a sale, how we attribute the sale, what's a qualified lead, how we attribute leads. Value-based pricing. So there's a lot of misconceptions on how it should work. I'll tell you what I think. So it's like that story where the ship is broken and the guy fixes it in 1 minute because he knew where to hit the hammer and he charges the guy a lot of money for it. It's the same thing. If the agency has very specialized expertise and we can solve something for you, we're going to charge you for it. For example, if you run Google ads in the health sector and your ads got banned, but you see competitors are running them, so you need our help to push ads through, but you don't want to hire us to manage your campaign because you already have an agency. We're going to charge you value-based. We're not going to charge you hourly-based because we're solving the issue for you. It took us years to figure out how to work through it, and it's a beneficial for both parties. I think where it doesn't work is when people have misconception about the value they bring or they forget about risk versus reward. So I see a lot of ads targeting agency coaching, how to grow your web development, web design business. And the story usually goes, You design the website, you charge them $1,000, but this website brought $10 million, so you should get $1 million out of it, which sounds good in theory, but they forgot about this whole risk versus reward. If all we're doing is designing or developing the website without taking any risk, we should not get any reward. So in these situations, it doesn't work. So this was sort of introduction about every pricing model that we're going to cover in this series. You can see how I think about them from the POV of risk versus reward, client versus agency. We're going to have more in-depth video about every pricing model with an example project. I'm going to talk about what's going through the head of an agency. You don't have to watch all of them, but I think if you go through our material and the videos, the next time you're looking for a marketing company or even a freelancer, you'll be in a way better position to evaluate whether this is a profitable relationship. Thank you for watching. Until the next time.